I'm going to show you another chess game now. The experts always advise you to control the centre by moving your pieces into the centre first, avoiding the outside pawns. They recommend that you castle as soon as possible, and they recommend that you do not move your king into the centre. Let's see what happens if we do the total opposite of all of that. My favourite move. Pawn to king, rook 4. 4, yeah. They then respond. Pawn to queen, rook 4, or as it's now known as A4, and the previous one is now known as H4. They move another pawn forward. I've no idea why they did that. Move my pawn to attack their pawn. I move another pawn forward. I don't think they actually know what they're doing. But never mind. I'll take their pawn. They take my pawn with their queen. Now I can start to control the centre, but this is to let the king out. Right, sorry, whoops. That's a thing of trouble there. Check. I move back. They saw the trap. I was trying to take there, but they moved the knight to block it. Move the queen here. Sorry, got finger problems at the moment. Use the keyboard instead. They moved a pawn. I move back, offering a queen exchange. They don't accept it. Now, so let's go back a bit. On the surface, they just thought they were getting a queen exchange. They rejected the queen exchange, and instead, they've lost their queen, and by taking my queen, they've now lost one of their rooks as well. So be careful of that. I'm going to go back a bit. What I think they were thinking here was that they thought if I move the queen to safety, and they intend to do check here and do a 4-king check by getting me in check and then taking my rook. That was their plan if I had moved the queen to a different square, which might have been safe but not threatened the pawn that they did eventually take. But it didn't work like that, and so all it did was to cause me to move my king out of the way. They cannot take anything at this time. They've moved their king to protect their bishop. Just a minute. I've now moved the knight. Get me into check. I move the king again. So the king is being moved up towards the centre, which you're not supposed to do, but I'm doing it anyway. I've now moved a pawn. I just take that pawn. Moved another pawn. Again, I'm moving it nearer to the centre, still remaining in the centre, which is not what you're supposed to do at all. Now I've moved it nearer to their king. They've moved their knight. I've moved my bishop here. And they cannot take because of this. They move their bishop, so I move back again. They move their king out of the way. Now I take their bishop. They move their knight, check. I move back here, but it's still sort of in the centre generally, the board. Now they move their knight. I move my knight. They move their king. I've moved the bishop to threaten the knight. They move a pawn. I move my king down. They move a pawn again. I move my king back up. They move their bishop. I realise that they're actually threatening my rook, but I ignore it at this time. They move their king. I move my knight again, once again ignoring the threat here. They move their king here. And now I move the killer blow. I move the rook down, checkmate. But what you probably don't notice is how brilliant this is in many ways, because what you probably may not notice is that the king is actually essential. The white king is essential to the checkmate. The fact that the white king is actually in the centre of the board, the exact centre of the board, allows this checkmate to exist. Why, you ask? Well, otherwise the only other valid move that they could have done would be to take the knight. If the king hadn't been there, they could have taken the knight. That would have been the only other valid move, and then they would have avoided the checkmate. There would not have been a checkmate then, because then they could have moved out of it. But because the knight is being protected by the king, which happens to be in the centre of the board, they cannot take it, meaning it is checkmate. Therefore, this checkmate was actually obtained by ignoring all of the rules. All of the advice, not the rules, but the rules given by so-called experts on the best ways to win. I did not break any of the rules of the chess game. I don't want chess.com to come after me and think I've been cheating or anything like that. That is not the case. Everything I did was within the rules of chess, but it goes totally against all the advice given by so-called professionals on how to win. So there you go, guys. professionals. What do they know? Thanks for watching. Bye.